Have you ever noticed how stories have a way of changing? Like when big events happen, there's the official story, the one told by those in charge. Then there's the real story, the one lived by those who experienced it. Back in 1991, when Freddie Mercury died, the world heard about AIDS, saw headlines, read articles. But what did those who knew him see? What did they feel? Here's one such story. It's a story that took place in a house, specifically Freddie's house. Garden Lodge. Imagine the greatest rock frontman of all time not on a stage. Not in sequins, not commanding 80,000 fans. But sitting quietly in his favorite armchair, surrounded by soft music, candlelight, and the people who knew him best. It was September 5th, 1990. Freddie Mercury turned 44 years old. And this wasn't just any birthday. It was his last. No headlines, no paparazzi, no grand spectacle. Just a gentle celebration at Garden Lodge, his beloved home in Kensington, a sanctuary filled with art, antiques, and silence. For the man who once said, "I'll be a rock star until I drop." This moment was different. Not because it was sad, but because it was real. Freddie, now frail from illness, still carried his fire. In his smile, in his wit, in the way he made everyone feel like they were the only person in the room. This was not a farewell, but it was a goodbye, whispered in laughter, tea, and love. By this time, Freddie had been living with AIDS for nearly 4 years. He had kept the diagnosis private, sharing it only with those closest to him. The world didn't know, but those in the room did. They could see it in his thin frame, in the quiet moments when he needed to rest. Yet his spirit, still blazing. He wore simple clothes. His hair was still perfectly styled. And when he laughed, that deep, mischievous laugh, it was so unmistakably Freddie. Friends had gathered, not in crowds, but in quiet reverence. Among them, Mary Austin, his first great love, the woman he once called his common-law wife. She had known him before Queen, before the fame, before the world turned him into a legend. And Jim Hutton, his partner, who stayed by his side every day, who cared for him with quiet devotion, and who called him my Freddie. They weren't there for a performance. They were there for him, for the man behind the music. Garden Lodge had always been more than a house. It was his soul made visible. Golden mirrors, Persian rugs, oil paintings, sculptures from faraway lands. Every object chosen with care. Every room a museum of his life. On this day, it was dressed in soft elegance. Candles flickered, flowers bloomed in vases, classical music played. Perhaps Puccini, perhaps Mozart, the kind of music that made Freddie close his eyes and sway, even when he could no longer dance. He sat among them, not as a king, but as a host. Opening small gifts, a book, a painting, a vintage record. Sipping tea, sharing a slice of birthday cake. Nothing grand. Everything meaningful. When someone put on a Queen song, Maybe Somebody to Love, or The Show Must Go On, he didn't sing. But his lips moved, his eyes closed, and for a moment he was back on stage, holding the world in the palm of his hand. Then he opened his eyes, smiled, and whispered, "I still love doing it. Not the fame, not the applause, but the music, the joy, the connection." Those who were there say he was reflective that day, not sad, not afraid, but present. He didn't talk about the future, but he looked at them, really looked, as if memorizing their faces. And in that silence, there was love. Deep, quiet, unshakable. He knew time was short, but he wasn't done living. Not yet. So he celebrated, because life, even in its final days, was still worth honoring. Just 14 months later, on November 24th, 1991, Freddie Mercury was gone. The next day, Brian May released a statement, written in Freddie's own words. "I have been tested HIV positive and have AIDS. I felt it correct to keep this private to protect those around me. But the time has come for my friends and fans to know the truth. And then, a final message. Be good to each other and treat yourself with dignity. No anger, no blame, only grace. And in that moment, the world finally understood the quiet strength of the man who had spent his final days not in fear, but in love. Today, Garden Lodge still stands. The windows are shuttered. The garden, private. The home, protected. It's not a museum, it's a memorial, a sacred space. And that birthday, September 5th, 1990, remains one of the most private, most beautiful moments in Freddie's life. Not because it was loud, not because it was famous, but because it was real. A man in his final year, choosing peace over spectacle, love over fame, home over the world. And in that choice, he said everything he needed to say. We remember Freddie for the roar, for the crown, for the voice that could shake the stars. But if you want to know the truth of who he was, look to the quiet, to the last birthday, to the man who, when the world expected a storm, chose instead to be a candle. Soft, warm, still burning. And for those who are there, that's the Freddie they carry. Not in stadiums, not in videos, but in their hearts. Because the greatest goodbyes don't always come with tears. Sometimes they come with a smile, a laugh, and a quiet thank you in the home he loved more than any other. Now, this is the Freddie story. The real story from the last birthday. But there are more stories like this. Stories that bring history alive, connect you with iconic figures, and sometimes rewrite the past.